I'm Paul Jeal, I'm the game director on F1 2013.
Formula One, the greatest competition. Cars designed and engineered by the brightest minds. Driven to the edge and beyond by the world's chosen few. Teams rise and fall. Drivers come and go. But echoes of the past always remain.
Well, I've been an F1 fan since about 1985 or 1986, and some of my earliest childhood memories, some of the hero drivers of yesteryear, and we wanted to get them back, and we wanted to celebrate the sport as it is now. It's been relatively static in terms of rules and of late, and we really wanted to inject something new into this year's game. It's been about 2 years in the making in terms of trying to get all the cars licensed and to deal with the removal of alcohol and tobacco sponsorship and to sign decent drivers and to sign some tracks, just so it made sense, and we were offering something completely different to what other games do in terms of just time trial or just a couple of cars you can take online. So it's literally taken a few years to bring together, and then as an extra sort of bonus, we wanted to sort of timestamp each of the eras, so it's very much reminiscent of those sort of early television memories, a yellow filter for the 1980s and some real basic text font. In the 1990s, kind of a little bit more modern and a bit more of a blue wash, and then obviously modern, bang up to date. Yeah, well, the fundamental gameplay of the cars, I mean, they handle almost completely the opposite to modern cars. Modern cars have got so much grip, everything's coming at you so fast. It's actually a nice respite to be able to race the classic cars, where it's a little bit more of a settled pace. I mean, I guess for people who don't know Formula One cars for back in the early and mid 80s in particular, they're a lot like muscle American cars, really. You end up spending a lot of your time kind of controlling wheel spin and trying to stop the back from stepping out. Obviously they've got a little bit more grip than that, but they're generally quite hard work to drive. You've not got that just turn in once precision that you've got with the modern cars. It's more kind of get it down to speed and wrestle it through a series of corners, and that's another reason why we also wanted some of the classic tracks, because the barriers are that much closer to the circuit, that sort of sense of danger, and the circuits are that much more tight and twisty. It offers something completely different. Yeah, well, for our first step onto scenarios, we spent a lot of time working on the tech. So there are 20 scenarios for the 2013 element. Some of them draw on episodes which people will remember, some sort of Lewis Hamilton, Brazil moments, for example. They're not exact recreations, but you'll begin to get a flavour for where we're going. Others are just kind of gameplay ones. In terms of the classics, I think it was more a case of just trying to play around with the content that we had. Obviously we haven't got all of the cars of the 1980s, which I would have loved to have had, but it's been a lot of hard work getting the 11 classic cars that we do have. And it's more about, sort of the first scenario, for example, has the 1980 Williams, which is, I guess at a bit of a performance disadvantage when you're looking at the other cars of that era, particularly the 1988 Ferrari, which had, like 1,000 horsepower. So the scenario is you and your teammate are first and second on the grid. Your teammate is doing the best job he can of holding people up in a car that's obviously at a disadvantage around Brands Hatch. And when they eventually break free of him, you've got to kind of really keep it on the edge in terms of not letting them overtake you. Really, with the inclusion of RaceNet last year, and also obviously the way that people interact with developers now through social media, Twitter, the forums, we've been able to sort of get a lot more data than we would traditionally be able to get. And very early it became obvious that 4 difficulty levels weren't enough. There were 2 big gaps between them. Some people said this one was too hard and this one was too easy. So we've introduced a 5th difficulty level, just smooth that all out so you feel that the next kind of rung up the ladder isn't too much of a leap for you. At the same time, there was 2, I guess, kind of issues with the AI. They do some super complicated stuff like defend their line and do all this, a few things, but with F1 2012 in particular, they were a little bit slow off the line, and in particular perhaps through the first few corners, so that's been fixed this year. So you're not able anymore to kind of artificially jump maybe further ahead than perhaps what your pace is. And at the same time, as you said, the AI themselves are more aggressive. I think before we were a little bit worried about too much contact and too many penalties being issued out, but this year with the data, we've just been able to smooth all of that over that much better, so that it's just a much better race experience this year. Yeah, well, we were lucky enough to meet him very early on this year because we've been doing some driver head scanning. Obviously, we got their likeness in the game in terms of the Parc Fermé, and again, as we begin to think about next gen, we want to involve the drivers more in other areas of the game as well. So he seemed calm and relaxed and a bit ready. I think it's always quite a big step up into Formula One. In particular, you always hear drivers talking about the difference in braking. How much sort of different it is, and how much, from other racing series, how much more impressive those cars are as well, I guess. So always difficult, I think, with the two teams, Marussia and Caterham, because they've both got two rookies. So you kind of not really got someone who you can gauge yourself. If Heikki Kovalainen who was at Spa practice today, as soon as you've got an established driver who's kind of feeding back on what the car was like last year, you kind of get a barometer for where you are. But hopefully they stick with him, give him a couple of years. I think that's, any driver now needs more than 1 year. Whether any drivers get that these days, it's hard to tell. Yeah, well, I think that this year, particularly for our Formula One franchise, we're now right at the limit of the current gen technology in terms of pushing the performance and the memory limitations. I think in terms of Codemasters, we want to just take our time and make sure that we get the transition over to next gen right, and to do the systems justice. That will mean improved physics, of course, improved graphics, of course. Stretching for that 60 frames a second, much quicker loading times. So there's a whole host of kind of ego technology improvements we're doing as a company right now to fine-tune our engine to work better with next-gen technology and giving it all freshen up. And then once those kind of early stages are out the way, we'll then sort of revamp F1 from the beginning, really. We don't really want to bring too much stuff across when perhaps, the technology is there to rewrite it and to do it better on next-gen. So I think it will be perhaps a small step back on next gen in terms of game content, but then to take a giant leap forward in terms of sort of simulation physics, graphics, etc. Yeah, I think the first port of call is going to be getting the physics system working across on next gen anyway. But I think over the next few years, certainly as our relationship with the teams has moved forward, particularly over the last few years. Graphically now games are doing things which they're very interested in. So we're very good at doing audio, we're very good at doing visuals, and obviously teams are very good at doing physics. So we're in discussions with them about perhaps exchanging technical information. So maybe we can really forge a partnership with some of the best engineers in the world, and if we can get any of that into the game and further blur that line between reality and games, then we'll be looking to do that. F1 2013 coming out October 4th on PlayStation 3, Xbox 360 and PC.